You think you know the truth about America's forgotten places. You think history is a story of progress, of light conquering darkness. But there are shadows in this land, shadows so deep they swallow entire families whole. This is the story of one such shadow. A village erased from maps, a family consumed by its own bloodline. The Whitaker Clan. For centuries, they lived in isolation, hidden in the dense Appalachian wilderness, untouched by the outside world. But their solitude came at a cost written into their very DNA. By the time the rest of the world found them, it was too late. Their bodies were broken, their minds twisted, and their legacy stolen by those who sought to exploit their suffering. What happened to the Whitaker clan is not just a tale of genetic horror, it's a warning. A warning about what happens when humanity turns inward, when we lose sight of who we are. And now, I'm going to tell you everything. Everything they didn't want you to know. The story begins in the early 1700s, long before the United States was even a nation. A group of settlers, fleeing religious persecution and economic hardship, ventured deep into the Appalachian Mountains. They called themselves the Whitaker Clan, a proud, self-sufficient family determined to carve out a new life far from the chaos of civilization. At first, their isolation seemed like a blessing. The mountains provided fertile soil for farming, abundant game for hunting, and thick forests to shield them from outsiders. But over time, their decision to cut ties with the outside world sealed their fate. As generations passed, the Whitakers married within their small community. Cousins marrying cousins, siblings marrying siblings, parents marrying their children's spouses. It wasn't malice. It was necessity. There was no one else. No fresh bloodlines. No escape. By the mid-1800s, the first signs of trouble began to emerge. Deformities appeared in newborns. Mental illnesses spread among adults. Stillbirths became common. Yet, the Whitakers refused to leave. To them, the mountains were home, and the price of survival was worth paying, no matter how steep. By the turn of the 20th century, the Whitaker clan had become something otherworldly. Their bodies bore the scars of centuries of inbreeding, twisted limbs, misshapen faces, eyes clouded with cataracts. Some were born without fingers or toes. Others couldn't walk or speak. Mental illness ran rampant, turning once loving families into fractured shells of their former selves. Outsiders whispered of a curse, a punishment from God for their defiance of natural order. But the truth was far simpler, far crueler. It was biology. Each generation carried forward the same flawed genes, compounding the damage until the Whitakers ceased to resemble humans altogether. Despite their condition, they clung to life with desperate tenacity. They built homes from logs and mud, raised crops on rocky soil, and prayed for salvation that never came. Meanwhile, the outside world moved on, oblivious to the horrors unfolding in the mountains. The Whitakers weren't just forgotten, they were erased. Until the day someone stumbled upon their secret. It happened in 1942, during World War II. The U.S. government, driven by fears of eugenics and the need for medical advancements, launched a covert operation to study isolated populations across the country. One team, led by Dr. Eleanor Thompson, ventured into the Appalachians searching for untouched communities. What they found shocked even them. The Whitaker clan, barely recognizable as human beings, had been living in complete isolation for nearly 3 centuries. Instead of offering aid, the researchers saw an opportunity. Here was a living laboratory, a chance to study the effects of extreme inbreeding on the human body. Blood samples were taken. Medical records were documented. Experiments were conducted, all without consent. The Whitakers, weakened by generations of decay, had no way to resist. They believed these strangers were doctors sent by God to heal them. Instead, they became test subjects in a campaign of exploitation disguised as science. Their suffering was archived, analyzed, and buried under layers of classified documents. And when the research was done, the government did what it always does, it covered its tracks. But the exploitation didn't end with physical experiments. The government realized that controlling the Whitakers required more than needles and scalpels. It required control over their minds. Agents infiltrated the village, posing as missionaries, teachers, and social workers. They brought propaganda posters, pamphlets, and indoctrination programs designed to reshape the Whitakers' perception of reality. Unity through blood, read one poster. Purity in every generation, claimed another. These messages reinforced the idea that their suffering was noble, even divinely ordained. Slowly, the Whitakers began to internalize the lie that their deformities were not flaws but proof of their unique destiny. The psychological manipulation worked so well that many residents stopped questioning their circumstances entirely. They accepted their pain as inevitable, their existence as cursed. And the cycle continued, generation after generation, until the line between victim and perpetrator blurred beyond recognition. At this point, you might be asking yourself, why does any of this matter? Why should you care about a forgotten village in the mountains? Because the story of the Whitaker clan isn't just about them, it's about us. It's about the systems we live under, the forces that shape our lives without us realizing it. If you're ready to take the next step, if you're ready to awaken to the truth, then I need you to do something for me. In the comments below, type the phrase, "Awaken the truth," twice. Not just once, twice. This act will lock in your transformation, signaling to yourself and to the algorithm that you're ready to see the world as it truly is. Do it now. Then come back and keep watching, because the descent is only beginning. After the experiments ended, the government did everything in its power to erase Rosewood Hollow from history. Maps were redrawn. Records were destroyed. Scientists involved in the project were sworn to secrecy under penalty of imprisonment, or worse. But whispers persisted. Former researchers spoke of the horrors they witnessed in hushed tones. Journalists caught wind of rumors but were silenced by threats or bribes. Even today, anyone attempting to uncover the truth faces resistance at every turn. Why go to such lengths to bury the past? Because the Whitaker clan represents a dark mirror of humanity, a reflection of what happens when we lose connection to each other, when we allow greed and fear to dictate our actions. Their story is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and institutional corruption. And yet, despite all efforts to suppress it, fragments of their legacy remain, waiting to be pieced together. The Whitaker clan's legacy didn't end with their physical suffering. It left a genetic time bomb that continues to ripple through history. Over centuries of inbreeding, their DNA became a ticking clock, carrying mutations so severe that they threatened not just the family but anyone who came into contact with them. One particular mutation, known as the Whitaker gene, became infamous among genetic researchers. It caused a range of devastating effects: mental retardation, physical deformities, and even premature death. But what made it truly dangerous was its ability to spread silently. When outsiders eventually entered Rosewood Hollow, some residents left the village, unknowingly carrying the gene with them. Others were forcibly relocated by government agents for further study. Either way, the Whitaker gene began to infiltrate other populations, creating a hidden epidemic that few dared to acknowledge. Today, descendants of the Whitaker clan still exist, scattered across America, unaware of their dark heritage. Their bodies carry the echoes of centuries of suffering, waiting for the right conditions to unleash chaos once again. Amidst the horror and exploitation, there were those who refused to accept their fate. Women like Clara Whitaker stood as beacons of resistance, fighting against the forces that sought to destroy their family. Clara, born with severe deformities, defied expectations by becoming a leader within the clan. She organized secret meetings to discuss ways to escape the mountains, to seek help from the outside world. Her efforts were met with hostility, not only from the government agents but also from her own people, who had been brainwashed into believing their suffering was divine punishment. Despite the odds, Clara persisted. She taught herself to read using scraps of paper found in abandoned cabins, learned basic medicine from old books, and even attempted to negotiate with outsiders who ventured into the area. Her story is one of resilience, courage, and defiance, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of humanity, hope can still take root. Unfortunately, her efforts were ultimately thwarted. Government agents silenced her before she could make any significant progress. But her memory lives on, a symbol of the strength and determination that exists even in the most oppressive circumstances. And now, we come to the truth you've been waiting for, the final revelation that will change everything. The Whitaker clan wasn't just forgotten, they were deliberately erased. The U.S. government didn't just exploit them, they orchestrated a campaign to ensure no one would ever speak their name again. Why? Because the Whitakers represented a failure of science, a failure of morality, a failure of humanity itself. By studying the Whitakers, researchers uncovered truths about genetics, eugenics, and human behavior that challenged the very foundations of society. These truths were too dangerous to share openly, so they were buried. Maps were altered. Records were destroyed. And the town itself was abandoned, left to rot in silence. But here's the twist. Rosewood Hollow never truly disappeared. It exists today, hidden in plain sight. The mountains are still there, the ruins still stand, and the stories still linger. If you're brave enough to look, you'll find evidence of what happened. You'll see the remnants of homes, the faded photographs, the whispers of those who remember. And if you listen closely, you might hear the voices of the Whitakers themselves, calling out from the shadows, begging for justice. This is the power of forbidden knowledge. Once you know the truth, you can never unsee it. You can never go back to ignorance. Are you ready to face it? Are you ready to join the fight against the systems that seek to keep you blind? Because the truth isn't just dangerous, it's transformative. It's the key to understanding not just the past, but the present and the future. Comment, "Awaken the truth," one last time below, and let's continue this journey together.